how did people stay warm before heaters? Some solutions were stranger than you'd expect. Let's find out. My name is Pico. This question has been bothering me for a while. Maybe you have stepped out of bed onto a heated floor, warm beneath your bare feet. You barely noticed it. Why would you? Warmth is just there now, waiting in the walls, rising from the vents, held in the floor. It fills the empty air of a whole room, whether you are standing in it or not. For most of human history, heating an entire room evenly was nearly impossible. Not the way we mean it now. A hearth warmed the bodies facing it, while much of its heat escaped with the smoke. The air by the door stayed cold enough to see your breath. So picture a house in a northern winter. Stone walls, one small fire, the dark coming early. The family is not spread out across warm rooms. They are pulling closer, to the fire, to each other, to anything that holds heat. Because this was the problem every winter returned. Warm air rose, smoke escaped. Stone walls drank the heat. Warmth always seemed to be trying to leave, and a room is mostly empty air above your head. Air you will never once sit in. Burning fuel to warm it was like pouring water into sand. So the real question was never, how do I heat this room? It was quieter than that, and much stranger. If you cannot warm the room, what do you warm instead? So they began with the smallest, warmest thing in the house, the body. If the air would not hold heat, you wrap the heat around the person instead. Layers first, wool over linen. Not for fashion, for the thin pockets of still air trapped between each layer. A person in enough wool becomes their own small room, and people came together. Beds were shared, not only for want of space, but for warmth. Two bodies under one blanket lose less heat than two bodies apart. Children between parents, the old nearest the embers. Warmth was something you pooled, like water in a dry season. And when the body alone wasn't enough, they borrowed heat and carried it. A stone left by the fire all evening, wrapped in cloth, slipped down beneath the blankets. Elsewhere, a brass pan filled with glowing embers, the warming pan, passed slowly over the sheets before anyone lay down. The heat didn't last the whole night. It didn't have to. It only had to take the cold out of the sheets before your own body took over. And across parts of northern and western Europe, they went further. They built a bed inside a box, wooden walls, a small door or a curtain to pull shut behind you. Climb in, close it, and the space is barely bigger than your body. Your own breath, your own warmth, held in a pocket of wood. A room within a room, small enough to finally keep warm. For a few hours, it worked. Inside the box, winter had less air to conquer. But warmth like this had a rule. It belonged to the bed, only the bed. The moment you stood and pushed open that little door, the cold was waiting, exactly where you left it. So what about the waking hours? The long day when a person still has to sit and work and live, outside the blankets? In a 19th century Iranian home, the answer sat in the middle of the main room. A low wooden table, but not for eating. Underneath it, a brazier, a shallow dish of glowing charcoal, and over the whole thing, a single enormous quilt, spread wide, reaching the floor on every side. This was the korsi. You didn't stand near it, you joined it. The family settled on the floor around all four sides. Legs slid underneath, the quilt drawn up to the waist, sometimes to the chest. And beneath that quilt, trapped and patient and shared, sat a pocket of warmth that held all evening long. This is where the winter was spent. Tea and meals passed across the top. Hands remained free for cards and games. Through the long winter nights, stories were told and poetry read aloud. And when sleep came, no one wanted to leave it. So often, they didn't. They lay down where they sat, heads out in the cold air, bodies still under the quilt, and slept the whole night around a single dish of coals. Think about what that really is. Not a heated house, not even a heated room. One low table, one quilt, one handful of fire, warming the only thing that ever truly needed to be warm: the people themselves. But this warmth belonged only to those beneath the quilt. Reach past its edge, and the room was still winter. Stand up. And winter took you straight back. A korsi could warm a family. It could never warm a house. So elsewhere, facing the very same cold, people struck a different bargain. If you cannot keep the whole house warm, then perhaps you stop living in the whole house. A korsi gathered a family beneath one quilt. Elsewhere, people met the same winter with a larger version of the same idea. They gave up the rest of the house. When the cold came, the inhabited house quietly shrank. Rooms beyond the fire became places to pass through, not places to remain. Doors stayed closed. Work, meals, and rest moved closer to the one place that held flame: the hearth. More and more of life gathered there. In early modern British cottages, some homes built this idea straight into the wall. Beside the fire was the inglenook, a deep, partially enclosed chimney corner, sometimes wide enough for seats on either side. You sat within the sheltered recess beside the hearth, close to the flames, protected from the drafts, catching the warmth before it slipped upward and away. A whole small world of heat tucked into the corner of one room. This was the same answer, only larger. Not warming the house, surrendering it, keeping only the space you could truly hold. But every version of this shared one hunger: fire, and fire was never free. Wood had to be cut and carried and dried and guarded. Every warm hour was paid for in labor, long before the first flame was lit. So somewhere in the cold, another question was waiting. Was there warmth a household could capture without feeding another log to the fire? The answer was already standing out in the field. In parts of rural Ireland and in farming regions of the Alps, houses took different forms but shared one arrangement. Living quarters and livestock spaces were gathered beneath the same roof. In some, the family lived at one end. At the other, the animals. The cattle were not brought inside as heaters. They were brought in to survive the winter too, sheltered from the snow, kept safe, kept close for the work of the farm. But once they were there, something else happened. A cow is a warm body. Large, slow, and constant. It breathes, it radiates, all night, without stopping. Bring several beneath the same roof, and their warmth enters the structure too, without another log being fed to the hearth. It was not free. The animals demanded hay, cleaning, and care, but the family lived beside breathing bodies whose warmth was already being made. It was not a clean warmth. The air was thick, animal breath, straw, the heat of bodies close together. But on the coldest nights, that shared warmth could take an edge off the cold. Two kinds of life, keeping each other through the dark. And here, my friend, is the thing worth stopping for. Look back at all of it: the wool, the shared bed, the warming stone, the quilt over the coals, the one-kept room, the breath of the animals. None of it was ever about making more heat. It was about making the warm place smaller, until it was exactly the size of a body. Every answer so far had depended on something that burned, something that breathed, or the body's own heat. The most elegant solution did not escape fire. It taught stone to remember it. It reached down for the floor, and instead of letting the warmth disappear with the smoke, it sent the fire's hot breath beneath the room and left its heat behind. In the cold of the Korean peninsula, they built the answer into the house itself. It was called the ondol. A fire was lit in a low firebox called the agungi, often connected to the household hearth. But its hot smoke did not travel directly upward and disappear. It was drawn sideways, underneath the floor. Beneath the room ran a network of low flues, covered by broad, flat stones, and sealed above with layers of earth and clay. The fire's hot breath crawled through that hidden network from one end of the room to the other, warming every stone it passed. And only then slipped out through a chimney on the far side. By the time the smoke was gone, the floor was no longer only a floor. It had drunk the heat, the stone held it, the clay held it, and it gave that warmth back slowly, for hours. So a family did not gather around a fire. They sat and ate and slept, directly on the warm floor. A grandmother could lie down on the floor at night, long after the last flame had died in the stove, and the floor beneath her would still be warm. Not the air. The floor, the one surface a resting body actually touches. This was the whole story, solved in a single patient idea. Do not spend your heat on the empty air above a person's head. Put it beneath them, where the body rests, where warmth is actually felt. And this answer never truly went away. Convenience came, of course. It took away the smoke and the ash and most of the labor. The stone channels gave way to pipes carrying warm water. The hearth became a boiler, then a switch on a wall. But convenience did not erase the idea. It hid the fire and kept the warm floor. Which brings me back to a small thing. Maybe you have stepped out of bed onto a heated floor. Warm beneath your bare feet, you barely noticed it. But now, you know what it is. It is an ancient answer, wearing modern clothes. A fire taught to hide beneath the stone, so the warmth waits exactly where a body will come to rest. Somewhere tonight, the smoke has long since cleared, and a floor, still warm, is holding the last of a fire that went out hours ago. What everyday object do you want Pico to follow next? Tell me below.